What strange slash spooky stuff have you seen? Once when I was in the desert, there was a telephone pole. On it looked exactly like a 10-foot tall bird of prey, just eyeing me down. It was about a good 5 minutes of walking, which felt like forever, just to see that it was a transformer that looked weird. None of the other poles had it either. Sounds dumb, but it really did look exactly like a gigantic human-sized hawk, and the head even seemed to follow you too. Really interesting illusion, since it also hit all the primal parts of your brain that gone, you're about to be fucking eaten by a bird. A year or two later, when I was gonna take a picture, it was gone, which adds a strange air to, it was right there, I tell you. It had been raining for a couple days, including that day, and when we sat around the campfire, we heard sticks snapping all night. Then in our tent, we heard the breathing. Then we saw the claws pushing into the tent. Then it started circling around our tent. At one point, it started biting into our tent. There was a recent bear attack in that area of the mountains. I was just a child, but I won't go out without a high-powered rifle. I was walking alone through a somewhat isolated wooded area atop a fell that has Bronze Age and medieval ruins. Suddenly, the wind picked up out of nowhere, and there was a really, really loud howling noise that had a mechanical feel to it. I've never heard anything like it before and since, and it made my blood run cold. I stayed calm and I was just passing through, but I noped out of there pretty quick. My grandpa owned a few hundred acres in New England, and I would spend my entire summers as a teenager wandering through the forest there. One year when I was about 16, I decided to head up to the furthest northeast corner of the land where I'd never been. And on my third day out, I came across 2 rows of trees, almost like an old road. So I followed them, in the wrong direction. They just ended at an old rock slide. So I turned around and went back in the other direction, and eventually I found a big clearing with a huge willow. And next to it is an old chapel with a broken off steeple. I do what any 16-year-old would do and immediately drop my gear and head inside. It's really boring. Just a rotting, empty room. But as soon as I stepped in, I felt like I just snuck into my parents' room. It was really oppressing. I kept almost hearing footsteps next to me. So I just fucked out of there less than a minute later and started heading home. A few days later, I convinced my grandpa to come with me to see it. And we eventually got to the old road and headed north back to the old chapel. But when we got there, the only thing in the clearing was the big willow. There was nothing else. No debris or anything, like if it had collapsed. All we could find was what could have been part of a foundation. But there was a ton of blackberry bushes, so we gave up pretty quick. I got yelled at for wasting Grandpa's time. We found him in that clearing years later, dead from a heart attack, they said. Just in his folding chair at his camp, next to the big willow, facing the spot where the old foundation was. Backpacking trip, 3 days, roughly 35-mile loop, nothing crazy, pretty typical. Second day, afternoon, sun still high up, around mile 20. Stepped just off trail to peak, fairly sparse pine forest. Not overgrown, rocket or anything, plenty of room all around. Dick out peeing. Feel like someone is watching me. Guy says, "Excuse me," as if he's trying to walk past me. Turn to tell whatever weirdo is trying to watch me pee to fuck off. All I say is, "Dude," as I look sideways and over my shoulder and realize there's no one there. Because of fucking course there isn't, right? Existential threat. Hiked the other 15 miles back to the car without really stopping. Didn't bother to filter water. Snacked while walking. No pics. No bullshit. I heard it clear as day. This wasn't some noob scared of the woods thing. It wasn't the wind rubbing one tree against another or a bird rustling around in a bush. This was human speech. The scariest part was when the sun was getting low as I approached my car. It wasn't the lack of sunlight that scared me, but the dread that something might happen with the car. It was my lifeline. But what if it didn't start? What if it was stuck in the mud? What if I had a flat? I had also never been so scared for so long. It was hours. And the entire time, I felt like I was running from something. That was probably in my mind. I didn't see anything chasing me, but it sure felt like it. Narnia is a real place. Can't tell you much more at this time. Once on a trail, I saw a black person. I came across a clearing in the middle of the night that had animals all in it. Deer, coyote, rabbits, an owl, even mice. Just all standing around. I spend a lot of time out in the woods alone, often at night. At first, it's spoopy, but then you get used to it and take no mind. Sometimes, though, I have these moments where the reality of my situation strikes me and I get horrified for a moment. It's times like that when I feel like something is with me, like something is lurking, and because my mind is always buzzing, I'm never taking notice of it. Sometimes those spontaneous terrors are too much for me to deal with, and I just get the fuck out, even if it's 2 a.m. or something. Be me, frequently night walk. Been down every road and trail around. Love nature, always love taking cool pics of animals and trees. Sometimes I'll have a couple drinks while walking around. Out one night, feeling good. See a very large, strange frog at the center of a patch of grass at the end of a dead-end road. Making eye contact. Get a weird feeling about this frog. Sit down near him for a minute. I say to him, frogs can have some beer too. Then I pour a little out onto a leaf next to him. Ask if I can take his picture. Carry on with my night. Next morning, leaving for work, and as I exit my house, I feel something lightly strike my arm. Look down and there's a tiny frog that just jumped off my door and onto me. Next day in the boiler room at work, when a little frog come a-hopping out from under my tool cart. Take him outside and release him. So on and so forth, every day for a week, frogs in strange places. You've become some sort of frog sorcerer. Frog pact. No particular order. Human traffickers, extremely aggressive moves, fresh abduction site where 2 teens were taken for presumably Molochite sacrifice, a bunch of city slickers in my super secret camping spot for an archery catalog photo shoot, fuckers, an erratically acting lone caribou that was not happy with us, the day where something followed us out of the mountains for about 150 miles. Never saw it though, so doesn't really count. And once a set of record-breaking moose tracks, followed by a set of record-breaking grizzly tracks, followed by a set of record-breaking wolf tracks. That one was funny. I didn't follow them though. When I was a kid around 9, I was walking a local trail alone, and this mangy fox followed me for about 20 minutes on my way out. Get into fly fishing, usually go with a mate. Whole time I'm there, have feeling of being watched. Keep catching something moving in the corner of my eye. Sometimes hear movement too. Friend oblivious to this stuff, he doesn't do much outdoor stuff. Nearly steps on snakes. Doesn't spot wildlife standing off in the trees, etc. Day ends uneventfully. Go back to same river next weekend on my own. Slightly further up. Walk down access road for about 1 kilometer. Bit over half a mile for the US crew. Decide to jump off access road and bush bash to river. Come to clearing that almost seems manicured. Tall trees, no sticks, etc. On ground, just really green grass. Oddly cleared, not really like the most of the Australian mountain forest in the area. Clamber down into the river and fish. No bites, so after 2 hours I climb back up and start to leave. Get to the cleared area and hear the distinctive click of my net magnet breaking contact and feel slight tug on my backpack it hangs off. Spin around thinking I got caught on something. Net nowhere to be seen. Check bag. Net not in it. Figure must have fallen off in creek and magnet connector has just kicked around on my bag whilst I'm hiking, which has made the sound. Search river for around 1 hour. Flow was minimal, so no way it got swept away. Can't see net, so spend next hour retracing steps on my walk in. Find nothing. Eventually go home. Tell workmates about net going missing at work Monday. Decide to go back that afternoon and look. Start to walk down access road and search. There, clear as day, hanging on a slim sapling is my net. There's no way I missed it last time. Walk closer to net, notice it's hanging at a weird angle. Get to lift it. Sapling is threaded through the center of the net. No way it got caught like that and pulled off my bag. Try to lift the net up and off the sapling. Sapling much taller than I am, standing on tiptoes, cannot lift net off top of sapling. Bend it over and snap sapling. Loud audible crack as I break sapling. Suddenly feel like I'm being watched. Because I'm weird, I call out thanks for bringing my net back. Hear heavy bipedal footsteps run away down through the forest. Nope, out of there. Work at a fairly rural park in the front kiosk. Super slow day, maybe 10 cars came in for the day. Most of them had already left. Nothing to do, so sit in the kiosk and watch out the window with both doors open for airflow and circulation. All of a sudden I hear someone say, "Hey!" Turn around expecting a visitor in the back door. No one's there. I go out to investigate, make a lap around the kiosk. No one there. Spend the rest of my shift uneasy and a little paranoid. Also hear stories about some workers seeing faces in the windows of the historical house we have on the property. Another one. Was out on a backpacking trip with a class. We were all sleeping in our own tents. I was dead asleep. All of a sudden I wake up and hear what sounds like someone say, "Hey, watch this." My tent starts shaking like someone grabbed the top and started going to town. Still half asleep, I go, "Hey, what the fuck?" Tent stops shaking. Don't hear anything for the rest of the night. Morning comes and I check around my tent. No evidence that anything had been there. Peck related, my tent on that trip. "Hey, watch this." Lamau. For a while in Shasta, there was a dude attacking people with a chainsaw, and I saw him run into someone's campfire and get fucked up. That's like saying, "So anyway, I skydived with a clown." You're gonna need to say a bit more than just that, Lamau. Came across this in Slovakia. Not deep in the woods, but a few kilometers away from any village. In a valley surrounded by forest as I was on my way to a ruined castle. Not soul around. Gloomy weather. Nothing paranormal, but I've got two good stories. I'll start with story 1. Mimi, 28 male, with one of my best friends, 29 male, and his girl, 26 female. Camp on the flat part to the left in the pic. There's an RV park about 2 miles away at the base where the photo was taken. Came to this spot last minute because previous camping spot was literally being gatekept by some Filipino bitch who put a gate over a public road. Decided to come here to this backup spot since we spent 3 hours driving. We get to the lake at 4 p.m. Hike 2 miles and camp off of the trail. Gather wood, cook dinner, break out a box of wine. All normal camping shit. His girlfriend goes to bed in tent. We stay up getting drunk and smoking cigs. Run out of firewood. Oh well. We grab some wood to keep an insanely small fire until it goes out. Still have a liter of wine. We figure we'll kill it to make packing out easy. Hear leaves rustling and twigs snapping. Turn our headlamps on and we see 2 weirdos in their early 20s, one of which is carrying a corgi over their shoulders in the pitch dark, no light at 1 a.m. in the morning. We look at them and say hello, and they kind of sheepishly go, "Oh, hey," and walk off all sketchy. Dog is silent as can be. They continue past our campsite and walk to the trail. We don't see them again. Still have no idea what the fuck they were doing since the trail looped around and we didn't see them again, which is really strange. Didn't realize how fucked up it was until the morning when we realized they walked just straight into the woods with no light wearing regular street clothes. We assumed they were walking to one of the cabins, but the nearest one was like 2/3 miles away, and they would be walking on pretty rough terrain. Maybe they had a canoe or some shit, but also weird because we would have seen them earlier in the day when we were set up. Normal weekend overnight hike. As I rounded the ridge, I noticed the forest get much lusher and darker than anywhere else I'd been so far in this park. Didn't pay it much mind, figured it was just some microclimate and enjoyed the change of scenery. Then I felt the dread. Kept going, scanning for bears, cougars, more intently than usual, my subconscious alerting me to a real threat. In my extra scanning, I noticed a path through the trees off the trail. Didn't appear frequently, trafficked as the duff was undisturbed, but the trees were missing enough for it to stick out. The dread I had been feeling entering this area had been replaced with alarms screaming in my head, and I had to see what was down there since I was planning on camping nearby. Graveyard, not on the map. Paid my respects by reading all the graves that were legible and wishing them well. When I returned to the trail, the forest seemed friendlier, and I took that as my sign that I was in the clear. Researched it when I got home. It was a known graveyard, but just wasn't placed on the map for whatever reason. Wish I had known about it so I could just chalk it up to paranoia, but I had no idea it was there. But I sure felt it. Was walking on a path at sunset through some woods. Set on a stone was what appeared to be a dude, but the lower half of his left leg wasn't there. Couldn't see him super clear, but he looks up. I give a quick glance behind, looking back again, and he just straight up wasn't there. Was weird. Never hallucinated anything similar. Excuse potato quality of photo story number 2. Camping with same friend minus his girl. Hike up camel humps in VT in November. Stay at one of the many tent platforms near LT. Start cooking meals, super windy so very small fire. As we start settling down and having a beer, notice 3 headlamps crossing the ridge in picture. We turn on our lanterns so we don't freak them out. 3 small boys, one visibly coughing and ill. They don't say a word. Dad comes up a while later, hauling a big-ass Coleman tent in a 70-liter bag. Man was a champ. Kids talking amongst themselves, fucking around with sticks and stuff. Talked to Dad for a bit. Set up tent. See and hear their butane stove turn on through the tent. Was on for 6 minutes, then all lights went off. Weird enough, out of 6 tent platforms, they chose the one closest to us. Next morning, Dad's a bit more social and talks with us. Says he came from Massachusetts and was doing some hiking with the kids. Says he has a van that they travel in. Asks us about a shelter/cabin on a long trail. We tell him it snowed in more likely than not. Motherfucker says he's going up it with his kids. Advise him not to since it's probably locked. Does it anyways. Oh well. Walk back to parking lot to see his van. It's a small SUV packed to the brim with what looks like all their shit. Still convinced that dude murdered his wife and took the kids and was hiding them. Middle of the school week too when he was up there with them. Cliche and maybe not very out, but my brother noticed consistent, unexplainable lights in the skies, so we all stayed up to watch them one time. And wordlessly, we would look at each other as soon as we saw them happen. You hear the term impossible motion so often in UFO reports, but when you actually see something move like that in the sky, you really understand the feeling of seeing something that appears physically impossible. Recently camped in Nevada with my family. Millions of black crickets wandering around, and we saw a giant white glowing object in the sky at dusk. Figured it was a weather balloon. Camping as a kid, sometimes we would hear wolves outside of our tents, and the next morning there would be footprints everywhere, and our food boxes dragged halfway down the beach. Same place someone had their face eaten the year before. Hiking with my dog in Sweden. Walking through a forest and all is well. We are up on the low mountain among pines, moss, and sparse vegetation, and then the tracks lead down to a kind of gorge between the cliffs. Down there it's much darker and more dense vegetation. I start to feel a bit creeped out, like a feeling of general dread and uneasiness. My dog is acting nervous too. Then we come across a tree with parts of women's clothing hanging from it. A ripped shirt, a dirty bra among other things. I refrain from shitting my pants but walk away fast. Still with a creepy feeling of being watched when I continue on through the main trail. It only stops after I meet another dude with his dog passing by me the opposite way. In the spring of 2022, a friend and I went hunting for bear in the Umpqua National Forest outside Tiller, Oregon. There remained a bit of snow, maybe a foot or two, and we ended up hiking to the top of the meadow, next to a spring. Waiting, I ended up losing my chance at a bear after waiting several hours when my friend ended up in a coughing fit and the bear that was a good distance away at the bottom of the meadow bolted. That part is irrelevant. We ended up leaving shortly after because it was late, and by the time we were almost off of the trail, it was sunset. We were maybe 200 yards from the trailhead when we encountered a couple who were just getting onto the trail. The man had nothing but a very small day pack, and the woman had nothing except a baby on a baby carrier on her chest. They seemed extremely nervous, and in my autism I assumed it was because of the hunting rifle slung over my shoulder. The man shakily asked how it was going. I said it was going fine, just got done for the day. My friend and I kept walking, and I realized it sounded like they weren't moving, and I looked back, and they were just staring at us. When we looked back, they hurriedly kept walking down the trail towards the east. We encountered them at a split that occurs 0.1 miles from the trailhead. When we got to the trailhead, the only other vehicle beside ours was a blue Toyota FJ Cruiser with Idaho license plates. The car was completely empty. We drove off, and it really didn't set in how weird the interaction was until a half hour down the dirt roads. How strange it is that they were getting on a snow-covered trail right at sunset when the closest town, Tiller, which is only a couple of buildings, was nearly an hour of driving away. They didn't even seem equipped at all to camp overnight. I still don't know what was going on with that, if those people are still alive or not. Pick related, it's that area in the fall. Hiking in the woods, just chilling. Oh, it's getting dark. Time to set up camp. Neat, an old radio broadcasting tower. Guess I'll sleep here for funsies. Have my soup. Enjoy my time. Next morning, notice tons, 10 plus signal warnings of airborne asbestos and do not disturb anything on the site. Specifically, not even the ground. Oopsie, haha. Two stories. Be me, about 16 years old. I was walking down a country road around twilight. Not in the US, different country. Come up on this old man walking slowly a few meters ahead of me. As I catch up with him, he slowly turns his face and greets me. I slowed down to his pace and walked with him for a bit. Keen talk. I remember, it felt very oddly warm and very loving for a stranger. Asked me my name, whose family I was. He knew my grandpa who had died in war. Told me his name and where he lived, etc. I walked along, past an old burial ground. There was a gravestone about 5 yards from the path with some flowers, white and yellow daisy-like. Sudden breeze and the flowers danced wildly, waving in the breeze. I glanced at the gravestone. It had the exact name of the old man I just met, and the village he mentioned he was from. It said he died 13 years ago. I turned around, walking back along the path where I left the man, but there was no sign of him. Came back home, told my grandmother. She said she knew the family and he was a very kind man who had helped her family a lot, and was a mentor to my late grandfather. To this day, when I go back to visit my old country, I take flowers to his grave and sit there for a while, even though I never knew the man. Be me, just under 18 years old. Had a very strange dream one night. I was in some sort of foresty area, and go down these steps in a sort of space. Technically, if I went down the steps, it is underground, but it didn't feel like it. Felt airy. There's a sort of surreal light in the air. Not exactly foggy, but sort of. I see some statuettes randomly lined in this cave. Some sort of stone idols. Suddenly an old dude appears and says, "Oh, you're here. We were waiting for you." His behavior gave me a vibe like he was some kind of great-grandfather ancestor of mine. I have no recollection of what he told me, but somehow I was left with the impression that these idols were important and that somehow I was supposed to know about them. I sort of drifted off in the dream after that. Woke up, but somehow this stayed in my mind. I was having dinner with my mom and her mom, and told them about this dream. Both of them turned completely ashen-faced when they heard it. It turned out that my uncle had exactly that same dream when he was my age. I spoke to my uncle a few days later, and compared what he saw with mine, and everything seemed to be exactly the same. The steps going down, the aisles, the old man, and even, "Oh, you're here. We were waiting for you." It had been decades since my uncle had the dream, and he said it still haunts his mind, as it does mine. I still have no idea what it all means. Go for early morning hike to avoid people. 1.5 hours into hike, forest at peace. Suddenly start hearing a baby crying. Can't find the source. Didn't want to get too far from the path. Finish hike, get back home and try to search up what could make that sound. Find multiple videos of lyrebirds mimicking baby crying. Feel disappointed it wasn't X, but my country's wildlife fucking with me. That is the best I got. Not great, but at the time it was spooky. I scared my girlfriend by telling her that there were wild hogs around. I walked back from the grocery store. She tells me there's a hog ahead. Nearly shat my pants. But it was only a black dog. She laughed at me. I was 12 and riding bicycles with a friend on the countryside when suddenly in the middle of nowhere this man starts frantically calling out to us. So we get close and we get off our bikes, and then the man tries to steal my friend's bicycle, so we get back in our bicycles and get the fuck out of there. And for some reason we kept thinking he was chasing us, and after that I was too scared to go out of my bedroom for a week. I want real stories. Yeah, L might be better for that because X has a schizoperv problem. Not me, but my dad was telling me a story about him and his friend. He grew up on a farm in the woods. They heard what sounded like a baby crying. They wanted to investigate, but decided to nope the fuck out. Turns out cougars do that, so they were almost cat food. My great-grandpa found a shining door dice. He pulled it, a golden door open. What the fuck am I reading? He pulled it, golden door open. He pulled a golden door open? Is that what you're trying to say? Inside was a nice room. He entered and there were 3 beautiful angelic beings, each dressed in different colors, and they welcomed him. He was there for just a few moments. They asked if he was hungry. He said no because he ate at the sheep farm. They asked him if he wanted to remain with them. He said no because he expected to return home. They told him after he will die, and he will return there. Then he got outside, returned home. But in those few moments outside, 3 days passed and a few white points and hair appeared on his head. Another one. One brother from some great-grandparents 100 years ago took a hide in a hay barn to hunt. In the night, he heard a creature sing, a lady, similar to Baba Yaga. He hid himself in the back of the barn with a gun pointed to the door. He heard footsteps on the snow coming to the barn door. When she arrived at the door, he fired a shot. Was not a single footstep outside. Another one with Baba Yaga in a hut in the mountains. Hone boiled a 10-liter milk in a pot. It was boiling. No shit. She appeared in a lady form asking for some milk. He invited her to take from the pot, but take care because it's boiling. She drank instantly the 10 liters of boiling milk, and gone was. Miraculous grammar, really. That motherfucker is 110% Indian. I still swear something breathed into my left ear while hiking. Imagine someone cupping their mouth around your ear and blowing hard. Knocked me around, made my hair stand up, and I got off trail immediately. I had an encounter with this guy in Angeles National Forest. He's been harassing/attacking campers in the area for years. I was camping alone at a hike-in campsite. I wake up at 3 a.m. to piss, and when I get out of my tent, the dude is just hovering near my campsite. He looked strung the fuck out. I said something like, "Can I help you, dude?" And he asked, "Is there anyone with you?" At that point, I noticed he had something in his hand. He was kind of trying to hide it in his sleeve, and I didn't get a good look, but I'm pretty sure it was a knife. At that point, I very firmly said, "You gotta get out of here." Then he really freaked me out. Have you ever seen those videos of Charles Manson in court where he starts making these weird faces? The guy started doing that. It's so unnerving to see a deranged person be silly. Like, it would have been less scary if he had screamed or said he was going to kill me or something. He just made faces at me and started doing weird little voices. It was so fucking bizarre. I'd just never seen real schizophrenia like that before. I told him to fuck off again, and he finally did. But I definitely wasn't about to get back into my tent. I ended up getting the fire going again and just waiting up all night for the sun to rise. A few months later, I found out a lot of other people had encounters with this guy. I'm glad he's in custody now. I'm sure he'll be out soon, though, seeing as how it's California. I never had anything supernatural, but a few times while hiking, I'd gotten the feeling of being watched. Every single time I find cougar tracks nearby. Weird how you can feel it. A while back late at night, I heard a weird-ass sound that was of an animal screeching and getting attacked. It was sort of like a pig, but not a pig. Looked up a bunch of sounds for animals in my area. Still haven't found anything like it. It had to be pretty sizable, too. Larger than a raccoon or a fox. From the way everything sounded, it's not much. But when you're out in the dark surrounded by trees with everything all quiet, then suddenly hear what sounds like an animal being absolutely torn to shreds, it's spooky, and when you also can't really find out what it is, it becomes confusing. Be me, 2022, hiking down a trail trying to get to the 7-mile point, which is rusted out old cars in a clearing. Have been doing this every other week since COVID started. Get to maybe 1 mile down the trail and start feeling really, really weird. You know, eyes on the back of your head, basically keep snapping your head around to look behind you. Get to Mud Creek bed inspected for animal tracks. See the normal stuff, deer, old boot prints, etc., etc. Get all the way to the end of the drink and roll over a few logs for salamanders. Still feeling weird, but a lot less since forest opens up. In hindsight, I realized it's because there were no bushes for anything to hide in. If something was following me, I'd be able to see it. Start heading back onto the trail, and right as I enter the thick part of the woods, get this horrible feeling again, 10 times worse in this specific area, right as I get to the thick woods. Start walking back, still in this weird prey headspace, and get to the creek bed and inspect it again. Immediately I'm drawn to my original tracks, realize something's wrong with them. Through my tracks are big mountain lion tracks. Realize Sixth Sense is real. Realize that I still have a mile to go. Realize that I need a firearms license. Sixth Sense. What if he wants tree fitty? It's pretty tame, but on my first solo camping trip, I was about 1.5 miles off trail in a park. Around 1 a.m., I was still up, just chilling by the fire, and 30-something Russian teens and a few adults just walked through my off-trail camp. A girl explained that they were a part of a church and that they would come out to that spot for night hiking. They set up a small camp right next to me and started making food and praying for a long time. Basically a whole mass. It really weirded me out because why the fuck would they not go somewhere else out in the whole woods and knew that? A few of the people came over and started asking me about my faith and offering me to come to their church for service. They stayed for like 2 hours and then just left after. From the sick and demented mind of Jordan Peele. Trees foaming? If someone told me this, I wouldn't believe them. Lol. Once while working in Klamath NF on my way back from the lake, someone put up sticks in the shape of a pentagram at the trail crossroads. Not really spoopy aside from the fact that someone had been there, in a remote part of the forest, 1 to 2 hours within my passing. The other was in Mount St. Gorgonio, in a campground around Momure Route. I was camping alone, and in the night I heard and physically saw a shadow person, and I couldn't breathe. I started to freak out, then pray. It was as if everything snapped back to normal. Not sure if it was a dream, but it was extremely vivid and real. My boss from the USFS when I worked at Klamath had stories of the Great Basin Bigfoot and BLM land and UFOs in Montana. Second one was common bout of sleep paralysis, easily broken by attempting to hold your breath when you realize it's happening. My wife and I were dating at the time, and we were invited to go camping at Blue Water NM with her family, a group of about 10 people. We set everything up just offshore of the lake, and another group of friendly people but strangers, about the same size, was camped a little ways down the shore. I felt a weird vibe from the whole area during the day but brushed it off. My wife and I are not drinkers, so we were sober at night when shit went down. Our group and the other group were each doing our own thing at night, mostly playing card games, eating, and having some drinks. We kept hearing what sounded like a little girl whining. The youngest person in our group was my wife's 18-year-old little brother, but we assumed the little girl must be in the other group. The whining did sound a bit distressed, like asking for help. It got worse and worse, and eventually someone from that other group came over to ask if there was a little girl with us, because it sounded like she needed help. Nope, both groups full of adults. So with the other group, we gathered flashlights and started searching the area, thinking there's a little girl out here who's lost, scared, and confused and needing help. There's a field of grass between the lake and the forests. The little girl sounds were very loud, and we quickly found the source. In the grassy field in front of the forest, we all saw the same shit. This tall thing, taller than anyone in our group. It was skinny and completely white from head to toe. It was white. I couldn't make out features or clothes. I described it as well as I could. But as soon as we saw it and were watching it, the little girl noises continued like crying for help, and 100% from that thing. Everyone was quiet. We all looked at each other, but being in such a large group, felt safe to advance a bit and check it out. As we approached, it looked like it was gliding backwards towards the forest. It seemed like it was still facing us, just backwards away as we approached. When it got into the forest, we lost sight of it and couldn't hear the little girl anymore. Both groups discussed amongst each other how weird and honestly creepy it was, before mutually agreeing to keep an eye out for the rest of the night. The vibe was weird after that. Nobody felt like playing games or drinking, and it was late enough to go to bed. So everybody went to their tent for the night. I wanted to leave, but felt safe with my wife and her brothers in the tent we were in, and didn't want her family to think negatively of me for leaving. I couldn't sleep at all that night, and neither could the guys in the tent with me. Later at night, around 2 a.m., we heard it again. Same exact noise in the field behind us. We refused to leave the tent and left to get back to the city immediately the next morning. I have never in my life witnessed anything that compares. Sometimes the topic comes up with our family, and it still creeps all of us out. Not one person who was there that night could explain what we saw and heard. I've never told this story anywhere. I grew up in the Caribbean on a small island called Anguilla, part of the British West Indies. It has a couple small inhabited islands nearby. One right off of the island points called Anguilla Island or Christmas Island. The island is slim and long like an eel. There is one called Dog Island and one called Scrub Island, which has an airstrip for drug smuggling built in the 80s. The other island is called Prickly Pear. Often tourists will go over there to party for day trips. Most people don't stay overnight. There is a small structure right off the main leeward side beach, with some built-in benches and chairs, a built-in bar and snack shack, all open. Also an abandoned metal boat on the windward side of the island. I went to sailing school for a few years. I did scuba diving for shipwrecks and other reefs. Long story short, I was a very out person, fishing often. When I was about 13, I decided to take my small sailing boat to camp on Prickly Pear overnight. The whole day was fun. Caught and cooked a couple red snappers over an open fire. Explored the beach with my metal detector. At nighttime, I usually would have slept in a hammock outside between two coconut palms. However, I had a really weird feeling like I was being watched and decided to sleep inside the shack. It had a doorway and a counter with a small opening, so it had some shelter to it. Starting at around midnight, I could hear a lot of excessive splashing and laughing. It sounded like a young female voice. I was weirdly scared/excited, but next thing I know, it started calling my name, to come to the water. I was so scared I thought my heart was gonna beat out of my chest. I didn't even get up to look. Stayed alert as long as I could until I eventually fell asleep and sailed home the next day. I asked some old islander sailors and fishermen who said they would have made me disappear if I'd gone out. Not truly paranormal, but during my childhood in BSA, I would routinely wake up in the middle of the night and feel this disassociative feeling with the outside, as if my tent was in space. And yet sometimes also there was a feeling of another force out there. Not a person perhaps, no bumps in the night, but just something strangely cosmic out there. Anyone else relate? Yeah, that's what my night terrors felt like about 30 to 40% of the time. Hard to explain how it's similar to what you described, but the nothingness and the emptiness of the universe and the futility of life. It was similar to how I felt a few times while doing DMT. Be me. Solo camping on nearby military installation, reservation/range area. Middle of winter. Little fire going, drinking whiskey, starts to rain a bit, so go in my tent. Fall asleep. Wake up to the sound of voices and movement around my tent at around 4 a.m. Two men arguing outside my tent. Can see their shadows. One pulls his cock out and starts pissing on my tent, desperately trying to get up but my body wouldn't move. Aw man, don't piss on his tent. Fuck it, dude is off range. Finally snap up, pull my gun out and start shouting to get the fuck out. Go outside my tent swinging my pistol around. No one's there. Probably just a dream, but a couple years back, two guys were found murdered out there. One wrapped in a carpet, the other just domed next to him. Could have been them or the numerous other training-related deaths that have occurred there. Either way, dude had a huge schlong and I appreciate his buddy asking him not to piss on my tent. Cheers! I've got a couple stories. Camping in the BLM land just outside of Joshua Tree National Park. It's probably 10 p.m. We are all in bed getting ready for an early start. Suddenly I hear it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps? I look over at my friends wordlessly. Their eyes are wide open and they hear it too. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The footsteps sound human, like someone slowly moving towards us. Very quiet, intentionally soft steps. To me, they sound like bare feet. Crunch, crunch. This fucking thing must be mere inches away from the tent at this point. Despite the softness of the steps, they are definitely in twos and sound human-like and large. We grab the knife and all three rush out of the tent with flashlights. No one around. We scan the desert and it's just flat gravel and creosote. Another time, in Kings Canyon, hiking the loop around Zumwalt Meadow. My friends are both on mushrooms, I'm not. We pass two Nordic-looking identical twins. Tall, long, straight, bright blonde hair. Matching outfits of red tracksuits. They walk past us, wordlessly moving in the opposite direction. Friends comment on how they were identical twins. Think nothing of it. Walk 5 minutes further down the trail. The exact same identical twins pass us moving in the opposite direction once again. What the fuck? The entire center of the meadow is a bog. The loop is over a mile long. They sort of sneer at us as they pass the second time. I'm instantly taken aback. How the fuck is this even possible unless they literally sprinted around the entire meadow? Both of my friends on mushrooms are so high they don't even realize we passed the same people twice somehow. I start mildly freaking out trying to explain to them what just happened. This was not as spooky, but cooking bacon at 1 a.m. Hear a deep growl from 20 feet away but can't see the source. Throw a rock towards it. Eat bacon in the tent. Poopy thread, nice, I got one. Go camping with a girl I was fucking at the time. Decide to head over to Garner State Park. After doing the deed, we go out for a walk after dark. Climb over some rocks to get across a dry riverbed just to fuck around. Spot a huge hollowed out dead tree in the distance. Decide to check it out. Bitch starts moaning about bad vibes or some gay shit and refuses to enter the tree. Inside the tree was neat. No carvings or other signs of anyone being there. Notice a distinct lack of noise inside the tree. No crickets, no wind, no nothing. Cool. Decide to fuck off back the way we came. Climbing over the exact rocks we used to get onto the riverbed, I find sitting pretty a pair of Ray-Bans. Yoink! More moaning about how it's a fey trap or some shit. Get back to camp and fuck her brains out again. I miss her. She had a great ass. I don't understand why so many of you are into camping sex. I don't want the whole tent to reek of bad ussy. And that smell will make any man soft. Hey, Out, I have an issue. Some, I think, French bike tourists are camping right outside my field tonight, on my neighbor's plot. And I'm rather sure they don't have permission since they were hiding when I went by. So I want to creep them out. This place is rather rural, and there is no other house within a couple kilometers range. I was thinking about going fox hunting, but these people kind of ruined that. I feel like these people need to learn to respect our laws regarding right to roam. So my current plan is to grab my Geely and JBL, find some creepy sound effects to play, and set up in the forest edge nearby. Thoughts? Tips on sound effects or other ways to have fun legally this night? If I go through with it, I will report back. Playing babies crying is good. Police sirens too. I was at Chattahoochee National Forest, and the park site was Lake Russell Recreation Area. I was trying to sleep one night and I heard this strange whistling sound throughout the campsite. I'm pretty sure it was echoes coming from vehicles driving somewhere, but it was eerie. Another time was Providence Canyon. Shittiest campsite ever. Don't go there unless it's one of those pioneer wagon camps. And I settled down for the night after a long day. And after a couple hours of trying to sleep, I heard coyotes yipping and howling in the distance. I had my pistol with me and an extra magazine. Another thing that happened during my time there was when I was trying to sleep when I suddenly woke up to a shrieking sound and I couldn't sleep again that night. I packed my shit and went home that morning. And I also got a partial refund. I'm betting that last thing happened due to stress, and a shitty tent pad pillow made my head hurt. I looked at a pond once and saw my reflection. Me hiking, hear skeleton noises. Sprint back to car. Lucky I was only half a mile into the hike. Close call, almost encountered a forest skeleton. Last night I was in the mountains sleeping in my car. At 2 after midnight, an off-road vehicle passed and stopped nearby. One guy was sitting on the window with his legs inside the car and body outside, with a big flashlight flashing my car. I was under a blanket on rear seats. Then he continued on the road flashing. They were hunting illegal in the national park. After a while, I started my car and went back home. Illegal hunting from a car with a flashlight is a common method used. The scary part for me and, well, for a tourist who also had a car parked nearby, is that someone with a charged rifle, maybe with flashlight directly on the rifle, points at your car in the middle of the night out of nowhere. At least I was near home. But there were some tourist vans too. What kind of idiot spotlights cars while trying to be sneaky about poaching? An assortment of random stuff that spooked me. Nothing really noteworthy or whatever. I love these threads. Cool stories all. 1. A time when I wanted to test my new night vision out in the mountains. Not too far west of Denver. I drive off on a small highway and park at a pull-off. I had a mountain house or something, but figured I'd go down a hill to a creek to get water. Then boil and filter, etc. There's a creek at the bottom of a pretty steep V-notch in the terrain. Probably 100 feet elevation drop from the highway. The day was bright and sunny at my car, but once I got down to the water, it was nearly dark as night. Lots of tree cover. Didn't like that. Felt watched, so I got the water and booked it. Later that night, I went walking out into the forest with the Nodge and multiple times didn't notice deer until I was almost right on top of them. Shined an IR illuminator out and saw dozens of eyes staring back at me from multiple directions. Felt unwelcome and left. 2. Various times camping where you can't help but be sure that you're hearing footsteps outside your tent. That's pretty typical, I guess. NBD. 3. Once when I was a kid, I was staying at a grandparents' mountain cabin with a cousin. We look out the window in the middle of the night and see two mountain lions ferociously fighting, like totally tearing into one another. Only thing I can compare it to is the videos I see of grizzlies ripping each other apart. The next morning, there's no trace. I chalk it up to seeing things. On that same trip, I was awoken near midnight and remember running outside as fast as I could. In front of me was a herd of what seemed to be hundreds of elk stampeding through Grandpa's property. I remember being there with my cousin and a couple uncles. Fell down in the snow and propped myself up on a stump as they thundered by. I can still see it in my mind. The moon was full and it illuminated the elk pretty well. Only problem is I can't verify it with anyone else in the family. Odd. Probably just a very vivid dream. 4. I saw a skinwalker out in Nebraska driving to a reservoir in the pitch black of night. We almost ran over this guy sprinting away from us down the road. Just as we were going to hit him, he starts flapping his arms and becoming an owl right before my very eyes. That's all. Again, nothing super scary. Being out is fun. I feel like I'm forgetting something. We'll post if I recall. This was around 4 years ago and took place in Mendocino National Forest. Anyone from this region of California knows that there's a whole lot of tweakers, and these tweakers like to spend time in the woods. I've usually not had any problems, but let's just say I wouldn't want to be a solo woman out there. However, it's a gorgeous forest, and if you know where to look, you can find solitude. Picture is the airstrip north of Lake Pillsbury from a different trip to this forest. I was deep in the woods with a buddy of mine I'll call David. We were camped off a dirt road way off the beaten path, and we'd had to creep up it real slow. It was around 1 a.m. and David was getting ready for bed in the tent while I stowed some gear in the truck, which was between me and the road at the moment. With the tent behind me, I paused, thinking I was hearing something. It sounded like an engine and really squeaky shocks. A little unnerving at 1 a.m. this deep in the woods, but I thought to myself that it's public land, and if people want to do hood rat shit out here in the middle of nowhere at night, then they've got the right to. My attitude towards whoever these people were changed pretty quickly when I spotted them. They were creeping up the road, lights out, towards our camp. Instinctively, I turned off my headlamp just before they came around the bend into the clearing where we were, and just watched from behind the truck. My rifle was leaned up against the wheel. I hear David go, "What the fuck?" from inside the tent, and shuffling around, no doubt looking for his pistol. At this point, I'm at about DEFCON 2. If someone pulled up on me with their lights on, I might have been a little bit more charitable. But the fact that they rolled up on me, lights out in the middle of the night, was setting off some alarm bells. 2 dudes exit the truck and start walking towards us. They're skinny, but I can't see much more than that, as the moonlight is really faint. They've got lights and something else in each hand. Not sure what, but I didn't want to find out. In that moment, I decided it was now or never. I came out from behind the truck, holding my rifle with the receiver in my right hand, an M1 carbine for the K-fags in this thread. In the excitement, I forgot to turn my headlamp on like a total retard. "What's up?" I asked, trying not to sound either threatening or scared, probably failing at both. They freeze for a second, then without a word, turn around, get back in their truck, and drive off slowly, continuing up the road. David finally extricates himself from the tent and asks what the fuck just happened, and I tell him. It's at this point that we realized the truck drove up the road maybe another 30 seconds before the engine just stopped. We weren't sure if it was just being muffled by the brush or if they had killed it. Either way, we were majorly sketched out and decided to call it quits. We basically just picked up the tent and tossed it in the truck bed and wedged it in with some gearboxes before beginning the long drive home. My rifle was in my lap and David had his pistol in his coat pocket. We bumped down the dirt road faster than we probably should have for around 2 hours before finally exiting the woods. The whole time checking over our shoulders for the truck. We only stopped to pull over at a rest stop and quickly case the weapons before continuing home. We got there around 6 in the morning. Overreaction? Probably in retrospect, but at the time it seemed pretty sketch. I remember going into Crownland, north of Gravenhurst in Ontario, 2010. Me and my GF at the time were pathing our way to a spot we were interested in. Came across a marijuana field. A dude on the other side waved at us, then began speed walking towards us. We turned and ran back where he came. It was a good 40-minute sprint back to the car. Not supernatural, but spooky at the moment. Summer 2016, hiking in a Saguaro National Park. Signs all over the place closing off certain trails due to killer bee infestations. Warning that if you get swarmed, run as fast as you can and they'll drop pursuit after a quarter mile. Bypass 2 or 3 closed trails with these signs. Passing through an area with trees on either side of the trail, winds pick up. Distant buzzing sound. Slight concern.mp3. Winds pick up more. Buzzing becomes louder and sounds closer. Winds start whipping the trees around. Loud, angry buzzing all around me. Drop my pack and prepare to sprint down the trail. Buzzing suddenly subsides, as do the winds. Trees sit still. My face when it was quite literally just the wind. Late summer of 2020. Bad breakup, pandemic, life is falling apart. Plan to cross the Dead Mountains alone, a 3-day hike in the Austrian Alps. First day goes smoothly, if slower than expected. Day 2, the heat ramps up. I'm exhausted. Nausea keeps me from eating enough. The thought of day 3 looms heavy in my mind. Terrain will only be harder from here on out, nothing but bare rock. The ride gets sheer, rising up in front of me like an insurmountable wall. Decide to stop early for a day. Plan to set up camp near the scenic mountain lake, Peck related. Descend into the valley, flanked by steep walls on either side. Not a soul in sight. Take an absolutely horrible shit. The light is fading fast. Only flattish ground is close to these abandoned shepherds' huts. Finally finish up the night, closing in fast. Dozing off, feeling feverish and exhausted. I shoot up suddenly. There's footsteps circling the tent. They're close. Unzip, crawl out. Nothing but the pitch black dark staring back. My heart is pounding, weighing the options. After listening intently into the darkness, I lie back down. Footsteps again, then harsh barking echoing through the valley. Sometimes distant, sometimes as if they're coming directly from the abandoned shacks only meters away. I keep lying there. I accept my fate. The cycle repeats in a vortex of echoing dread. Eventually I pass out. The morning comes. I wake up, alive. Pack my shit fast. The valley is empty as when I made camp. The water still and the huts deserted. I descend, trying hard not to think about what lies beyond. Be hiking the Appalachian Trail. Start night hiking during the summer to escape the heat. One night get hit with a terrible storm. Realize I haven't seen any trail markers in a few hours. Pull up phone to check GPS app. Can't use phone because every raindrop simulates a tap. Phone spazzing out due to the random taps. Eventually the phone zooms out on the map. My GPS point is miles away from the trail. Realize I've been walking the wrong direction for miles. Rain still coming down hard. Turn around. There's a canine too big to be a coyote, too small to be a wolf. Coy wolf? He looks at me. I look at him. I turn and hike miles back to the trail. Miles later, I find the turn I missed. Set up my hammock and go to sleep. Did I see my spirit animal? Nothing paranormal, but I was stalked for miles by a polar bear up in Alaska. It's pretty eerie knowing that you're actively being hunted for food. Hiking North Cascades, 20 miles-ish out of Marble Mount. Alone on a trail at night. We all feel creeped. Book it back after sunset. Hair raised. But for no reason. Just tweaking out. Sprinting downhill with packs on. Drive down shitty forest road in our BS sedan. Tree falls on car. Bang. Remove it because it was a small tree. Laugh at this unlikely event. Tree falls in front of car immediately. Small again. Remove it. Aiden, what's that? I said. The ferns on the side of the road are fucking spinning. Like the fronds are rotating. Then rotating back. Fast. No wind at all. No sound. Just the car engine and the ferns in every direction fucking dancing. Friend jumps back in the car like a pussy. I do it once around like a tard. Don't see anything. I was overconfident because of my previous encounter. Get in. We 3 drive home. No damage to the car except minor paint scratch. Nobody has ever found this odd or unsettling except the only person I met who believed my Sasquatch encounter, which I have 2 witnesses for. The actual Sasquatch encounter was kinda passé, and honestly this bullshit creeped me out way more than the rock throwing did.
I'm so excited, I'm as happy as can be. Oh, roll on, you Mississippi, roll on. Come on, you lazy team, we'll move on. Somebody